name is Edward Ebenezer Jeremiah Brown. I'm a football supporter of Ipswich Town. Wherever they play, you'll find me. I haven't missed a game since I was 3. With me scarf and me rattle and a big rosette, singing where was the goalie when the ball was in the net. Follow the town, up or down. I'm Edward Ebenezer Jeremiah Brown, but everybody call me Ted.
Hello and welcome to a special edition of We Follow the Town, because this is following off of a very busy week actually in the world of Ipswich Town. So after a long and somewhat painful week, I'm delighted to be joined by Stephen Parry, and as always, he should hopefully be joining us later, Leigh Simons. But before we get into today's show, I just want to talk about our sponsor. Old Joe's Golf is a golfing place, and Julian Hughes offers golf lessons there, and he is a member of the World Golf Teachers Federation. So whether you're just starting out on your golfing journey or you already know how to play, Julian can help you improve your game. So what are you waiting for? Book lessons through Old Joe's Golf or directly through Julian Hughes at 07392 834 199. I'll briefly repeat that again, 07392 834 199. So let's get on to today's show, because as I mentioned, we have had quite a turbulent week in the world of Ipswich Town, and I'm joined by somebody who you might recognise from Talking Town, Stephen Parry. So first of all, how are you feeling after yesterday's performance? Because that might be quite a cliched question, but I reckon a lot of Town fans are quite split in regards to how they feel. Some might be positive about the future, whereas others might be a bit more negative about how we're playing on the pitch.
I'm positive about the future. I don't think anybody really could say they're not positive about the future. I had my rant last night. I was angry last night, not just because we lost. It was the abject failure. It was dire. You know, this is the worst I've ever seen Ipswich Town play. I don't know whether it's a culture. I don't know whether it's a philosophy that they've got mindset or whatever. But they just didn't. They haven't looked up for it for a while. I don't think it's anything to do with Paul Cook. I think it's the fact that they weren't doing it under Lambert. I just don't think they want to do it anymore. I don't think they care. They just don't love. It's as if they don't love the club and they don't want to give the best for the club. And if that's the case, we don't need these people. Let's get rid and have a blank piece of paper with some new owners, a new idea from the manager and CEO, and let's build again.
So do you reckon anybody's playing for the club at all? Because, okay, Luke Chambers, he's the captain. Some people might not necessarily rate him. He's a Marmite player, but I reckon he plays for the badge. But does anybody else in that team, and feel free to get involved in the comments, actually play for the club itself?
You know, at the end of the day, that's my opinion. You know, they'll probably all say they do. You know, you just don't see it. You know, even with Chambers, people turn around and say, well, he plays for, he's passionate, he loves the club. Well, I saw a tweet back in 2012. You know, what was it? Richard Wellens was saying the same thing. You know, Chambers played then. You know, that was 2012. You know, and the same stuff's happening now. So 9 years has gone by and we're still saying the same things. So something's got to be wrong. If Chambers is playing for the club, then why isn't he the one rollicking people? Why is he the one looking for people to hide behind when things go wrong? They're all looking for somebody else to blame. You know, take responsibility. Say, look, I messed up. It's my fault. Don't do what I did. None of them are doing that. They're just all looking for somebody else to blame, and it's shocking.
So is it something to do with the club culture? Because, okay, let's not lie. This has been a problem for a while. It was a problem under Mick McCarthy. It was a problem under Paul Lambert. But personally, I think Paul Lambert was a dreadful manager. And now it's a problem under Cook. But you can't necessarily blame Cook because he's a new manager and he's stuck with this load of players. So do you reckon that it's actually a problem within the club's culture, a deep-rooted problem within the culture?
I think it was a problem ever since Marcus Evans started stopping spending. You know, we were playing some good stuff under Royal and things like that when he was still spending a few quid, and under Keane we had some good games. You know, I wasn't his biggest fan. You know, that season when we just survived under Mick, and then you know we did well. You know, and he started withdrawing his funding, and it's as if from there it's been like, well, we'll survive, we'll just get by, we'll just manage, and it's like gradually drifted. It's if we have to accept that this is our lot. Well, no, it doesn't have to be our lot. This is something that someone's chosen for us. Doesn't mean we have to be content with it, you know. And it goes down to when we got relegated, and you know, I didn't comment at the time, and maybe we all should have commented, but they got applauded for getting relegated. I've seen teams, you know, rage on the field, and players have had to be escorted off when teams have got relegated. They got applauded, and are they thinking like, "Oh, we did all right then"? Because if someone applauds you, you think you're doing a good job, you know. And I think we were a little bit resigned, probably 2 or 3 years earlier, that we were going to go down sooner or later, and we just thought, "Oh, let's happen now." You know.
Do you reckon there was complacency? Do you reckon there was complacency within the squad?
Oh yeah, I think I think start of the last season in the Championship, I think most of them probably knew they were probably going to get relegated, because we just missed out the year before. You know, I think it was only Bart that kept us in that league that year. You know, and then you know Hurst came in and dismantled everything. You know, then he got off to a poor start. Then Paul Lambert came in. I suppose he did his best with what he had, you know, and then we ended up getting relegated. And I think from there, we should have had, this is our clear out day. Get rid of all the people who you know, who got relegated and, you know, brought all that baggage with them and brought in fresh faces on a new vision. But we didn't have the money for that, and there was no impetus to get that. So it was like, well, let's keep these players. They've been in the Championship. They might get us back, but I think most of them were broken, and I think they still are, and I don't think they've ever recovered from it.
So, okay, here's a comment here from Leigh Brown. Sadly, the players have a losing mentality, and it's time for some of them to move on. When Sunderland got relegated a few years ago, all the pundits were saying, okay, here's a team with a losing mentality. They need to learn how to win again. Now, in my opinion, we're not as poor as Sunderland were, but do you reckon there's a losing mentality around the team? Because, you know, like even after a few wins, we still didn't have like that winning mentality that everybody keeps banging on about.
But the difference is, when we had those few wins, and I still say those, my opinion is, those few wins we had, especially at the beginning of Paul Cook's era, yeah, or just before Paul Cook arrived, we didn't win. We didn't really win. You know, you could say Hull had a bad game. Accrington went down to 10 men, and then still bossed us after they went down to 10 men. You know, those games could have gone either way, quite easily gone either way. You know, just like the Peterborough game when they won. You know, it was one of those like knife edge games that the Peterborough one fell their way, and those three went our way. You know, I don't think we actually won the game. We got the result, but the performance, we didn't win. You know, and it's the performance more than anything that says that, like, well, are they good enough? You know, we don't dominate anyone.
So, okay, there's a conversation going on in the comments as well, and basically it's about which players we should be keeping. And we're going to talk about that later on in the show, because that will be a segment where we will go through the squad and talk about who we think should stay and who should go. Reece Curtis, some players may have been told that they aren't getting a new contract, so that may explain the poor performances. Ryan Wazza, only Downs is worth keeping. First of all, I want to get your thoughts on Reece's comment, because there's quite a few comments in the chat and some of them are quite interesting, but this one stands out because we were briefly talking about that before we went live on air, that the contract situation may be the reason why a few of them aren't playing.
Well, you know, it's like I said, it's been touted that Edwards has had interest from like Preston and people like that. You know, discussions get talked about when players are out of contract for way before the end of the season. You know, we'll talk to our players, see if we're going to offer them a deal, and if we're not going to offer them a deal, and the players' agents will scout out other opportunities elsewhere. That's common practice. You know, so I think all players in the club, their agents will be looking around to see if they can get a deal. I think a lot of them will be hard pushed to get another deal, but that's another question. You know, but I don't think Paul Cook will be knocking down any doors to try and get signing many of these players. I think, you know, the likes of the ones who were already contracted, you know, you've got the Wolfendens, the Zells, the Downses, you know, at a push, I might give Toto an extra year because I think he's got an extension. He's got a year's extension. I might give him that.
He's been consistent, hasn't he? He's been really well for our standards. I mean, consistent.
Well, I'd say at a push. It depends on what direction Paul Cook and Mark Ashton want to go in terms of defence. He might not suit the plans moving forward. You know, that we do not know yet, and we won't know until probably early June, maybe middle of June, the sorts of players who are coming in. So we won't probably know the sort of people we're looking at. But I think a lot of this will be decided behind closed doors, and we really won't find out until the end of the season, because a lot of them probably know they're not going to be playing for this club again. And quite frankly, everybody would love them to put an effort in and say, well, I'm playing for my career, but they don't seem to want to. It's as if a lot of them are already set up somewhere else. So what difference does it make? They're just going through the motions.
Okay, so I'm reading through my notes, and one of the questions that I've got for this show is, do we lack in quality or do we lack in quantity? Like, okay, the quantity question is a bit daft, really, because we have the largest squad in League One. Yet when you look at our bench, I don't see any quality. I don't see any depth. Freddie Sears, in my opinion, isn't really a player that adds depth to the team. So for you, is it quality or quantity that we lack?
Definitely quality in certain areas. You know, we've got goal scorers who can't hit barn door. You know, at the end of the day, you can't, you know, you've got defenders in this division who's got more than our goal scorer, a top goal scorer. It's embarrassing, you know. And like, yeah, I know you've got the argument to say, well, you know, he's been injured. Yeah, if you're injured, you're even less useless, you know, because even a fit player is better than no player. He might not score, but at least he'll be there, you know. So there's a big argument to say that should any of the forwards be kept? To be fairly honest, I'd keep Norwood and just stick him as third choice, get two more in. And then if we're playing one up front, you've got Norwood as a third choice. You know, a lot of this will be decided, like I said, behind closed doors. And it's got, like I said, that's what's going to make it an exciting summer. You know, they're like notifications every 5 minutes. And I can see quite a lot of incomings, to be honest. I said probably about 8 to 10. Yeah. And probably 10 plus going out. You know, it wouldn't surprise me if it's around that number. I think you could probably make a side, you know, like I said, with lots of Toto, Downs, Dizelle possibly as a bench option, Norwood as a bench option maybe, you know, Wolfenden, you know, and then you've got the likes of Lancaster, you know, Dobra, maybe even bring Baggott through.
Yeah, I agree about Baggott, because Baggott, I was asked about this earlier on by the guest that we had on this afternoon. The first thing he mentioned to me after the show was, where is Baggott? Why isn't he playing in the squad? Why isn't he anywhere near the team? And I didn't really have an answer. Like, I think he's out on loan, isn't he? But why don't we give Baggott a go?
The thing is, and this was my worry with Paul Cook, and it was the worry when Paul Cook was at Wigan. I don't mind if he brings in players, but he never really used a lot of youth at Wigan. You know, they had that good young lad they had at Wigan, and he hardly ever played. And he was like one of the first out the door when administration come. And it worries me that. I hope he's pushed in that direction by the owners, because they said they want to rely on youth. I hope he's pushed in that direction by the owners and the CEO, because Ashton did a lot of youth as well at Bristol City. You know, that's Bobby Reid and people like that. You know, they were all youth players. So I think he will, and I think some of them will come through. But they've got to be of the right quality. And people say that, well, they're not good enough. Well, we've never seen them, so we don't know. You know, that's why I say we've got 6 games. Let's bin off these old stages who obviously aren't doing anything. Let's stick some younger players in there and just see what they've got. Are they going to do any worse than 3-0 at Wimbledon?
Not really.
You know, I think you could put a walking football team in there and it probably wouldn't do worse than what we did yesterday. You know, so at least then it kills 2 birds with 1 stone. We find out if they're good enough.
And of course, if you want to get involved in the show, comment in the comments down below, or give me a message directly on Twitter if you want to appear on the stream, because we do welcome people on the show to get involved. But okay, I'm going to ask you one more question before we do get onto the news, because we do have quite a lot of things to talk about. So, okay, Leigh Brown here. The players chucked Lambert under a bus. Now Cook, time for them to move on. So, did we really throw Lambert under the bus? Because, in my opinion, his man management was poor. You saw what he did to the young players. I think it was El Mazouni and Dobra when he refused to let them take part in the team photo. And then you saw him single out young players like Liam Gibbs for no reason during a press conference. So did they really throw Lambert under the bus? And could they do the same maybe to Paul Cook?
To be fair, I think Lambert threw himself under the bus. Yeah. I think when it came to a head and he went on talk radio and effectively dissed the owner, I think that was Lambert, you know, effectively like saying sack me or back me or sack me. And the owner said, right, you're sacked. No, let's not, you know, the players didn't get rid of Lambert because it was only a month earlier that Marcus Evans was saying, he's my man, you know what I mean? And then the only difference between that and then was Paul Lambert went on national radio and said Marcus Evans was effectively a tight ass. You know, so I think there's a lot more to it than just that. If that hadn't happened, I don't think Lambert would have got sacked. You know, he'd just been backed in January.
And he made Nolan and Lambert and Jackson, train with the kids, as Ryan Wazza just said there.
Well, at the end of the day, I have no love for Lambert, and I think his time had run its course. You know, he'd had plenty of time to get this team into shape. He'd had a good 5 windows. He's had money. You know, he even had some money. You know, I know it was spent on loans, but it's still not free, you know, in January. So, and I'm thinking like, well, was all his decisions wrong? No, you know, was sending Jackson to the 23s wrong? His attitude since he's come back hasn't exactly been sterling, has it? You know, he comes back like some shining hero and still ends up doing sod all, you know, but put an effort in, you know.
Are we still seeing the effects of what Lambert did to Jackson? Because as you just alluded to there, since coming back from his, I don't know what you can call it, timeout maybe, he hasn't really been the same player. His attitude hasn't been great. He hasn't been the same player up front. You know, like that old Jackson that we saw last season, maybe still not great, hasn't really showed his head this season, has he?
I think he was offered a job. Was it Huddersfield? I think it was.
Huddersfield. And I think we turned it down. Please feel free to correct us in the chat if we're wrong.
And he wanted to go. Paul Lambert said, no, I want you to stay. He had a huff. He went to the 23s. And he's still in a huff that he didn't go. Because he probably sees it's his only chance to get into the Championship. You know, the top and bottom of it is, if that's the attitude, you don't want to play for a club, leave. If you don't want to be it, leave. Because if you're here and getting paid, yeah, and let's be fair, I very much doubt there's many people watching who wouldn't love to do what he's doing. You know, and like there's thousands and thousands of kids trying very hard every single year to do what he's doing, and he's with a club that's a loyal club that will look after you. And he's treating it with utter contempt because he wants to go somewhere else. Well, if you feel like that, the door's there. No one's tied you out. No one's tying you down. And put a transfer request in and leave. You know, he didn't even. You know, that's when he wasn't even ballsy enough. Like at least Downs made it clear he wanted to go. You know, he stuck a transfer request in reportedly. Yeah, Jackson didn't even do that. You know, have the courage of your convictions. If that's what you want, say, look, I'm going to put a transfer request in. I don't care if you drop me. I want out. But he didn't even do that, and I just think he's come back in a huff, and I think he's still got a huff. Quite frankly, he can go as well.
Yeah, agreed. And I have no idea why we decided to keep him. I reckon we should have allowed him to leave. Because at the end of the day, if a player doesn't want to play for the club, then he won't play for the club. Okay, he might get a few appearances here and there, but if he's not there mentally, then he's not going to be there mentally on the pitch. But ITFC Tweedy, Dobra has fought his way to the first team. He was getting pushed out to go on loan, but said no, and he wanted to fight and play for the first team. That's the kind of attitude we need. Reece Curtis, I'd do anything to play for Ipswich. Those players are taking it for granted. So, yeah, I think that's most of us fans, really, that most of us would play for Ipswich anyway, that most of us would dream to play for Ipswich. So just your thoughts on ITFC Tweedy's message here. Dobra, do we need more players like him? Because his mindset, if anything, has been incredibly commendable. He's fought for his place in the first team. He at least gives a bit of effort on the pitch. So, yeah, is Dobra maybe the player who we need?
Well, at the end of the day, I take it as a broader point. And it's like, yeah, Dobra's attitude, it's commendable, but when you've got people like Alan Judge, he's not going to get in front of Alan Judge because Alan Judge will say, I was in the Irish team. You're in the Albanian team. For some reason, Ireland, even though they had never qualified for anything, has more kudos than Albania. I'm thinking like, yeah, but this lad can play. That goal he scored against Portsmouth, I think it was. No, Gillingham. That's what we're missing all season. A number 10 who just runs around one defender and then curls it in the top corner. That was sweet. When's Judge ever done that? We haven't seen that from Judge since he was at Brentford. Come on. Let's give him a chance. And the likes of Lancaster, he's had like 2 goals and like 3 assists. Come on. He only played about 5 games. Let's give him a go. So you can go down the list. You've got Lancaster, you've got, Gibbs, you've got, probably you've probably even got Nevada when he comes back. All these players who have got some talent, even Simpson, all these players who've got some talent. We've got 6 games left. Just stick them in the side, see what they're made of, see what the metal is. We'll find out if they're good or not. They'll sink or swim. And if they sink, then we can ship them out. If they swim, keep them on for a bit.
I'm going to play devil's advocate here. So we let go of quite a few young players. We let go of Harry Wright, Alan Prisbeck, I hope I haven't slaughtered his name, and Ben Falami. Ben Falami, he's a good player, I think. Should we have given him a chance? Because we do have a history of letting go young players who've gone on to do better things. Jordan Rhodes, for example, look where he is now. Jack Marriott, I think Jack Marriott had an attitude problem, which is the reason why he left. But these players have left. Is that kind of proof that we haven't actually given our young players a real go at the first team?
Well, yeah, you could, but you could also say Jordan Rhodes did play a few games and he didn't really pull up any trees, did he? You could always say that about anyone, Ivan Toney was at Newcastle's youth team. If they knew what Ivan Toney was now, they wouldn't have let him go. It's hard to say that, young Parry, they're saying he's going to be the next Harry Kane. Well, if he's the next Harry Kane, God, that's a low bar, because he's not Harry Kane anywhere near yet, more like Harry Enfield. But the top and bottom of it is like, you don't know. A lot of the time it's a gamble and you have to take it on faith. And you have to think, has he got something? But if they're never given a chance, you don't know whether they've got something. And that's why I think these 6 games might be very useful for the likes of Leigh and Gibson, the likes of Dobra, the likes of Lancaster, maybe even El Mazzuni. Give them a run, see what they've got, because we all know that Kieran Dyer wants to cut down the youth team, the under-23s, because he thinks that's too big, so he can bring in some of the under-18s. Because every year we're going to get like a dozen players come into each age group, and there's only a certain amount in the under-23s before we either say, well, you're going to go or you're not. the Shibek one and Harry Relic one. Well, we've got other goalkeepers who are younger. You know, there's an argument to say yes. If they're not going to be a first choice keeper next season, at 24, you're better off looking elsewhere.
Exactly, yeah.
That's with Harry Wright. You know, as much as I love his dad, top and bottom of it is we're not a charity.
Yeah.
And, you know, and like that's some people's argument with Dizel. They're saying, he's living off his dad's name. I actually think there's a player in there who, in a better side, will actually do something. But I want to see it. That's why I'd be happy to give him another year at least on the bench, so I can see him in a better team, in a team that's not defeated. Because those through balls he makes, if we've got players who can make runs onto us, which we haven't at the moment, he looks more effective when people will collect those balls or recycle those balls and possibly make chances with them. You know, then they go, oh, what a great assist. At the moment, it's, well, what a pass, but that's it. You know, it looks better.
So let's talk about the news a minute, because this is almost a perfect segue into what we're talking about. The under-18s, Cameron Humphreys, Cameron Stewart and Ola Bello scored the goals as Town's under-18s won 3-2 at Wigan this afternoon in the Professional Development League 2 South. The side, coached by Adam Ate and Jason Dizel, netted twice before half-time before the Latics hit back during the second half. But Bellows' goal sandwiched their 2 strikes to secure the victory, and they remain in second in the division, 4 points behind Charlton, but with a game in hand. Now, how much of the under-18s do you watch, and how good are they? Because they're second in this side. They are a really good side. And Adam Ate and Jason Dizel, they've got them playing very, very well.
Well, it's watching under-18s games up in the northwest is pretty tricky, especially when during COVID. You know what I mean? So it's usually I'll watch it on the Twitter updates. You know what I mean? Or unless it's being played live on Facebook, I'll watch it on that. You know, I enjoy watching the ladies' game against what was it?
Billericay?
Billericay, that was the one. I watched that on YouTube. Bad result, but it was a good game.
Yeah.
You know, so I try and keep as informed as I can. You know, I know there's others around, who are more informed than me. You know, I use them to guide my knowledge because they know more than I do. But it shows that there's talent there. You know, what is it? We're now into the quarterfinals of the Youth Cup.
Yeah.
Beating Middlesbrough. We've got Sheffield United on Saturday. We've got to get to the semi-final. I think that Wigan team, they'd lost once before we played them. So that's a fair decent achievement. If they've only lost one game until we turn up, everybody would love that to be our first team. So it makes me wonder. I'm thinking like, well, that's what it makes me think this season's dead. Let's have a look at a few from the under-23s who's doing quite well. A few from the under-18s who's doing quite well. Just see how developed they are.
So let's read through a few comments a minute. Reese Curtis, I'd do anything to be able to play for Ipswich. I think we just read that. Ben Moore, thoughts on Ross Crane? Should he play? Ross Crane, should he play? Have you seen much of him? I mean, I haven't so far, to be fair.
He's not the first name that jumps out, but
did he play the Papa John's Trophy?
Sorry, so. I think he played. Did he not play when Liam Gibbs played?
I think he did, yeah.
Top and bottom of it is, at the end of the day, looking at the performance on Tuesday, I would quite frankly stick anyone in. Barring Downs, I'd probably stick anyone in above any of those. From any age group, to be honest, even going down to the under-13s. At least they'd have the desire, they'd have the passion, And these players don't have that. You need eagerness, you need enthusiasm, and you might not have the finished article from a younger player, but you're gonna get that energy, you're gonna get the enthusiasm. And there's one thing that teams in this division won't like: it'll be the surprise element. They'll have never seen these players before. They have no idea. They can't turn around and say, well, we're going to do X, Y, and Z against this player, because they've never seen that player before. Everyone knows what to do against Luke Chambers. Everyone knows what to do against Stephen Ward. You know, everyone knows what to do with every single one of our players. The only ones who look a little bit indifferent is when the likes of Dobra came on. You know, they didn't have a clue where he was. You know, when Dobra played, I think it was against, was it Wigan?
I think it was Wigan, yeah.
You know, no, it was Rochdale. Was it Wigan? Wigan or Rochdale, one or two. And they're all melding into one now.
I can barely remember myself.
It's like they didn't know. You know, he finds pockets of space, and they didn't know where he was going to go. And I'm thinking that's because they don't know who he is. They've never seen him play, so you can't set up against someone you've never seen. And I think, you know, for the next 6 games, that surprise element might benefit us. You know, and it couldn't do any. Like I said, I can't. You know, it's my opinion. It'll not happen. Yeah, it would take a bold manager to turn around to a lot of old players who are being paid thousands a week and saying, right, none of you are playing. We're going to play all these young kids instead. I'd be delighted. I tell you what, that was the biggest FU to them players, and that's just what the manager needs to do. Just to say, look, you ain't good enough. I'd rather play my youth players than you because you ain't good enough. You know. And that to me, I think most fans will be going spot on, but I can't see it. Can't see it happening.
Okay, so let's talk about Paul Cook's post-match press conference after Wimbledon. Because, okay, to be fair, there's not much to talk about the Wimbledon game because it wasn't to win. It was a very poor performance. Maybe we'll get on to a bit of that afterwards. But boss Paul Cook pulled no punches in his post-match press conference following Town's humiliating 3-0 defeat away at AFC Wimbledon, admitting that the Blues are a million miles away from being a good team and added that the fans must be bored and tired of it now. What do you make? And I invite those of you who are in the comments to get involved as well. What do you make of his comments? Because under Paul Lambert wasn't necessarily the most honest manager. He would never dream of coming out and saying something like that. But there we have Paul Cook coming out and saying that the fans must be tired and bored and that our team are a million miles away from being a good team. So what do you make of that? Is it a good thing that he's coming out and being honest like this?
Well, like I said, you know, football's about opinions, and I can just give my opinions about what it is, you know. And you know, there's been a lot of people saying that, you know, we've regressed under Paul Cook and things like that. I disagree. I think the players have just given up. You know, it's not Paul Cook's made us regress. It's the players that made us regress. You know, and I go back again. I don't think we actually won those games. I think the other teams lost them more than anything. You know, if they'd have turned up, if Hull had turned up, we wouldn't have won. I'm sorry. It's just a joke to think that this team has suddenly gone from beating Hull, yeah, who are now top of the league, yeah, to get destroyed by Wimbledon. You know, come on, that's not the same team. It can't be. You know, that's a parallel universe thing. You know, and I'm thinking like, there's got to be something to it. And I'm sorry, Matt Gill doesn't make a team play like that so well. I'm sorry, he'd be managing Barcelona if he did. You know, and he's not. You know, let's be realistic. So I think it was like a catalogue of events. You know, it was like the players were probably so cheesed off with Paul Lambert. They thought, oh, I can play now. They didn't know who was going to come in. So they thought, well, other managers will be watching us play. Let's maybe play a little bit better. And maybe that was our bounce while they were thinking like, who's coming in? You know, and because normally at Ipswich, we have managers ready. You know, Paul Lambert was virtually in as soon as Hurst went. You know, so we usually have managers ready unless it's middle of the season, end of the season. But there was quite a gap between Lambert going and Cook coming in. So players were like saying, well, obviously people that are talking to will be watching us. So maybe that was our bounce, and it's just we didn't employ a manager, but that was our bounce. You know, and after that bounce, we've reverted back to type. So, in regards to the comments he made, he's very guarded about, you know, having a go at players, and I respect that in a manager, you know, especially when he's still got 6 games to play. You know, he doesn't want to be like throwing the baby out of the bathwater. But he was very critical with all of them. You know, I don't trust these players. You know, a manager's got to trust his players. If he doesn't trust his players, he's got nothing. You know, he tells them to do a job, and if he can't trust them to do that job, then it's done. The relationship has gone. And I really don't know where we go from here unless there's like a massive overhaul with who's played on Saturday and who plays moving forward. I don't see it getting any better. I probably only see it getting worse. Fortunately, we're not going to slip into relegation or anything like that. So,
would consistency in regards to who he picks maybe help the results? Because if there's one thing, is that we haven't really had a consistent team all season. Like especially under Paul Cook, I think he's already used 23 players since coming in as manager. Is he testing the waters and seeing whether these players are good enough, or is he simply struggling to find his best team?
Well, I saw a comment about this on Twitter, and it was saying like that Paul Cook's changed his system and changed his players. But if you remember, I think it was Accrington. The game after Accrington was pretty much the same team. Yeah. So because we'd won that game, he left roughly the same team as what played that game as his first game, and it lost. It either lost or it drew. It didn't win anyway. Put it that way. Yeah. And so then he made a change, and then he went to his usual 4-2-3-1 formation, and he's persisted with that because that's his formation. That's what he likes. That's what he's used to. And then he figured out these players can't play it. He changed, obviously, different people in different areas. Trying to find people who could play in the system he wants to play, and he figured out these players can't play this system. None of these players can play this system. You probably might find the odd one like Downs in a defensive midfield role or something like that, but he was injured. So then he changed the system to suit the players, and he went two up top. And like after all, fans were crying, we should go two up top. We'll score goals. We can't score goals if we have one player up top. So we put two up top. Still can't score goals. So what else can he do? He's not changing it because he wants to change it. He's changing it because he's not getting results, and it's a results business. Of course, when he came in, he said, I'm going to have to change things around because as fans, these players better than I do. And he's right. There's only a certain amount you can tell about a player by watching him on the telly, and we don't get on the telly that much. So I don't think he's going to be paying iPhone to watch Ipswich if he's not in the running for the job. So he probably does know very little about these players. So, he has to use them. As a lot are out of contract, he's got to use them to see whether there's anything in them that he can move forward with moving forward. And I think he's come to the conclusion, especially last night, that there's nothing here. There's absolutely nothing here. This might as well be a clean slate. I think, like I said, there's a few players, we can go into that later. There's a few players who realistically I'd keep. And the rest, hire a big boss or escape or whatever.
So, okay, Ben Moore says, next year, with a better side, Dizelle and Dams could shine. Dizelle, because Dizelle is no young player really anymore. He's getting on, a bit like Teddy Bishop. Would you keep Dizelle or Bishop if a reasonable bid came in? Okay, we're not going to get like $1 million for them because, again, that ship has already sailed. But if like 500k, maybe from a championship, came in for the pair, would you accept it?
I think Bishop can go. In fact, I think Bishop's out of contract, so he probably will go.
Yep.
Yeah. Which is probably the best for him. Yeah. As much as it pains me because I think that there's a talent there, he's not producing it, and that's not. Like I said, I'll go back to it again. We're not a charity. We're not a rest home for failing players. Go somewhere else and prove yourself. Like I said, Chelsea did it with De Bruyne. He wasn't performing at Chelsea, so they let him go, and then Man City all of a sudden get a great player. So sometimes you have to move away to get going. You know what I mean? Like I said, Chelsea did it with what was it, Mo Salah as well. So I know they're extreme examples, but it shows that sometimes you have to leave to start your career again, and I hope he can do that for himself. Dizelle's an odd one, because he's been so injured so much, this is the first season we've had a virtual full season out of him. Yeah. So for me, I'd take that as the progress for this season. Yeah. We've seen he can get a full season out of him. Yeah. And I'm thinking like, well, let's take that as a win. You know, he signed a new contract. We've got him for another, I think, till 2024. You know, let's just take that for now and take the win that he can last the full season. Yeah. He's shown flashes that he can do all right. You know, he's had some good runs, he's had some good passes. Not a lot, I grant you. I'm not going to turn around and say, you know, he's a world star. He's an average player in an average team, or maybe he's an average player in a below average team. You know, but I'd like to see what he could do with better players around him. So I'd keep him as a bench option, maybe, you know, and then see how it goes. If he starts playing better than people that we bring in, then you can start thinking of, but I would start off as a bench option.
So the final bit of news we have for today, before we get into the final segment, Troy Parrott has been linked with an Ipswich Town return next season. Now, we briefly spoke about this before we went on air. In my opinion, I don't like the fact that we have so many loan signings. I don't reckon we should be relying on the loan market, if that makes sense. And Troy Parrott, he hasn't exactly set the world delight. So I invite those in the comments to share their opinions as well. But what do you make of Troy Parrott? Would you be happy to see him back next season? Or should we be going out there and actually taking players from a free, maybe, buying them, or even going into the lower leagues?
That's what I mean. There's a lot of imponderables moving forward. At the moment, we're not quite sure what direction, you know, the manager, the owners, and the chief exec want to take it transfer-wise. You know, like I said to you before we came on, there's some good free transfers in the Championship. If we can sell them a vision and offer them a reasonable wage with, when we get to the Championship, you'll be paid X amount, you know, that can persuade people to come. Remember, we've just persuaded a Championship chief executive to come to League One. You know, so if you can do it in off-field, you can do it on-field. But you've got to be able to sell the vision. And I was saying to you, there's lots of Nick Poe who's out of contract. You know, he played with Paul Cook at Wigan. Paul Cook could sell him a vision, say, you're my number 10, come here, this is what you'll get. And I think he would do very well as a number 10 at this club, you know. So it depends on where they go. Regards loans, I've never been a big fan of paying to improve other people's players. Yeah. I'd rather it was a necessary evil when we had no money or very little money, because the only way to get that little smidgen of quality was to lend somebody else's. But you know, I'm also thinking, you know, with the Ashton Brendan Rodgers dynamic, we'll be looking at Tottenham for players. Probably more likely we'll be going to Leicester for players if we're getting loan players. You know, because like there was a loan player that's supposed to have been going to Derby last year, you know, and it was muted. There was only Derby that was going to get him, and then Bristol City popped up and got him because Ashton knows Brendan Rodgers, and they said, right, we'd already made that deal, that's happening, and he went to Bristol City. So you know, these things happen, but I would like to think it would be a last minute thing. To let's get deals that we want to get done first in areas we want to get. And if there's been a particular area we've not been able to do a deal for whatever reason, then use loans to fill in any particular holes. But with it being such a flooded market for free transfers, because clubs are trying to cut costs because of COVID and lower the squad budgets, you know, there's so many free transfers out there, and it'll be a huge free transfer market. I think most of our dealings will probably be free transfers. And that's not a derogatory thing to say, because there's some very quality free transfers out there at the moment. Son Belonga's going on a free transfer. Like I said, Nick Powell's going on a free transfer. You know, there's a hell of a lot of free transfers out there with some good quality. And I think just to excite a few fans, there might be a sprinkling of buying the odd player, you know. But I think most of them, if there's any marquee signings, they'll probably be free transfers.
Okay, so let's get into our final segment. And I think put this question out on Twitter, asking you who in the current squad you would keep and who you would get rid of. Okay, we've been talking about this for a while, but we haven't actually gone through the entire list. So bear with me. There might be a few technical difficulties here as I'm trying to share my screen. But we're going to basically talk through who we think should stay and who we think should go. Now, let me know whether you can see this. Can anybody see this? Is it coming up?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the entire squad. Answer yes or no to whether you want to keep them. If you have like more of a reason, if that makes sense, in regards to why you think they should stay or go, then feel free to, well, give me that answer. Same in the comments. But okay, we're going to start with Thomas Holy. Should we keep him or should he go?
I would let go. I think he flaps too much for a guy his size. He does not command his box at all. You know, like a lot of people say, sometimes he comes off with the cleanest kit and he's a goalkeeper. You know, I think, you know, with the money we've got, and like I said, the attractability that we can project, or the new owners and the CEO can project, I think we can get a better standard. A better quality people.
So Harry Wright, he's already gone. But sorry, Dyer Cornell. Would you keep Dyer Cornell? He hasn't really played, has he?
No, I think he can go as well. You know, we're talking like we've got to get some wages off the books as well. So if we're bringing in another goalkeeper, get rid of the two we've got, bring in a better quality goalkeeper, and then, I don't know, bring in a free transfer young goalkeeper from somewhere who's on lower wages. Because at the end of the day, if you've got a good goalkeeper, he's your goalkeeper all season. It's very rare he gets injured. And if he is injured, you bring in a free transfer until he's recovered again, because then the other goalkeeper goes back in. You don't really, you know, we've always had two goalkeepers who were like, you know, near the same. You know what I mean? You know, and it's like, why? You're wasting money because one's sat at home doing nothing. And he's probably going to be sat at home most of the season. Cornell's probably loved it here. He's sat at home virtually all season doing nothing and getting paid. Now, I know most of us have with coronavirus, but come on. He's getting paid well for sitting at home doing nothing. You know, I'd love that. So it's no for both of them.
Okay, so no for Thomas Holy and Dyer Cornell. So Stephen Ward. Okay, I reckon I already know the answer to this, but Stephen Ward, would you keep him?
No.
Luke, okay.
Doesn't offer anything, there's no pace, and you get skinned far too easily.
Okay, here is a controversial one. Luke Chambers, the captain of our club, he's been at the club for over 10 years. Would you keep him?
Not as an on-field player.
How about as, I don't know, maybe like a Kieran Dyer type of role, working for the under-23s or under-18s, working with the youth players and maybe doing a bit behind the scenes as well. Would you keep him in that respect?
That's the tricky thing. I'd offer him that, but I don't think he'd accept it because I think he wants to play. You know, but if he can't be guaranteed first team and captain, he probably won't want to stick around. You know, I'd offer him that. You know, maybe play a coach role, but you wouldn't be like first team and you wouldn't be team captain. But I think he would turn it down, quite frankly.
So Reece Curtis, Chamber, get red as a player, stay as a coach. I think some people would agree with you. James Wilson. Now that's a difficult one because James Wilson, he's played well this season, but I don't know where he is at the moment. Maybe he's injured. Would you keep him or would you let go of him?
I would let go, just based on the fact that I know I'm over 50 and he's only 31. And I'm not saying it, but 31's, you know, there's no. You want to look at it from a business perspective. You know, we're paying him wage. He's no sell-on value. He's not worth anything. And it'd be better to get in like, even we had to buy him, like that lad from Feyenoord, that 21-year-old defender from Feyenoord. Buy him for $250,000. We're going to have some sort of sell-on value. If he turns out to be pretty decent, we could have a good sell-on value. You know, we're not a rest home. You know, we've got all these old players, you know, your Wards, your Chambers, you know, your Wilsons, your Judges. We're not a rest home for failing old players. You know, For me, he's an out.
Okay, so we're going to have to zip through them as there's a lot to get through. Luke Wolfenden and Aristotle Nsiala. Would you keep either of those two?
NCL, yes. Wolfenden, yes.
How about Janoy Danasian and Corian Darber? Because Danasian is an unknown quantity, really. We don't know how good he can be. He's doing fairly well out on loan, I think. But is he worth keeping around, maybe?
I thought he'd be all right, but I don't know whether he'd want to come back after the way he was treated. So it'd probably be best if we let go.
How about Corian Darber? Would you keep him? I would.
Oh, for certain. I've seen him play for her. He's been standout for her.
Yeah, and I remember, I think it was pre-season 2 years ago in Germany. You know, he played really well during pre-season, but for some reason his attitude wasn't right, so he never really got in.
I think he's going to play a big role next year.
Yeah, fingers crossed, because I reckon he's a fantastic player. But KVY, okay, let's actually go into detail here, because KVY, he's always injured. Not his fault at all. I do feel sorry for him. But he's a player with quality. He's a player with talent. And whenever he does play, when he's, up to speed and he's sharp, he does well. So would you keep him, or would you maybe, I don't know, maybe send him out on loan? I don't know.
Well, he's under contract, I think. So we're going to, unless someone comes in and buys him, which with his injury record is pretty unlikely.
Yeah.
He will be here next season. Hopefully he'll be fit. Hopefully he'll be able to start firing. And if he manages the whole of next season, I'd consider extending his contract, because I'm sure there is a player in there.
And Miles Kenlock, when I met McCarthy's old players, never really got going under any manager. We thought he had finally got going towards the end of Paul Lambert's tenure at the club. But all of a sudden, he's out in the cold again. So would you maybe give him a chance next season under Paul Cook, just to see whether he can play an entire season consistently? Or would you let go of him? Because I'd actually let him out on loan.
I think he's a bit old to start loaning him out. If he's not a finished article,
25, isn't he?
Yeah, no. If he's not the finished article by now, he's never going to be. I think he's one of those players. Let's swap him for Ward for the next 6 games and just make our minds up after that. If there's a player in there, say, look, you've not been playing. You've got 6 games. Show me what you've got. Prove to me you can be in this team. And if he does that, I have no problem in offering him a contract.
Okay, so let's briefly sum that up. Ward go, Chambers go, Wilson go, Wolfenden stay, Darber stay, Nsiala. Did we mention Nsiala? I think we said.
I think he's got a contract extension and a 1-year extension. I'd exercise that. I wouldn't go as far as offer him a contract, but I'd exercise his extension.
So Nsiala stay, KVY stay, and Kenlock go. So let's go on to the midfield, because look how many midfield players we have. We have so many midfield players in our squad. A lot of them are the same kind of players. I don't know why Lancaster is there. But Gwion Edwards, would you keep him?
No.
How about Cole Scouse?
No.
John Nolan?
He will stay, yeah. I think Paul Cook's got plans for him. And I think he's the sort of player who we need.
Why hasn't he played so far this season? Because is he injured, or is he?
He's injured.
He's injured, is he? Okay.
Yeah.
Jack Lancaster?
Stay.
Teddy Bishop?
Leave. I think this is a point we were making before, and it's like I said with some players, sometimes you have to leave to get better.
Yeah.
And he's never going to get to where he needs to be, I think, here. And
yeah.
I think it would be better for his career if he went somewhere else. We're probably going to regret it, but I think for himself, it would be better if he left.
How about Tristan Nydam? He's recently come back from an injury. He had some minutes yesterday. Would you keep him, or would you let him go?
Keep him.
Alan Judge. Now, Alan Judge is another player that splits opinion. I don't really see anything special in him. He obviously isn't the player that he was at Brentford. Would you maybe, I don't know, give him another chance next season as a bench option, or would you let go of him?
I get a lot of criticism from my opinion of Alan Judge, and yeah, there was a player in there a while back, but again, he's 31. People are saying, yeah, well, he could be captain. Well, he's not very good, then it doesn't matter whether you're captain. I don't think he's very good. I don't think he's good. He's not as good as he used to be, and he's 31. He's not going to get any better. So I think we can do better. And we're coming from a perspective of a low bar, and we've been told well, this is the best we can do. No, he's not the best we can do now. So let's reevaluate where our bar is and say, well, can we get better than him? Let's have a look, see if we can get better than him. If we can, then we'll get better than him.
Okay, so Flynn Downs, I think we already said that we want him to stay. How about Andre Dazelle?
I would keep Dazelle as a bench option. Like I said, I think, we take the win that he was fit. He's been fit all season. That's been a big plus, especially over the last few years. I still believe in a better team. There is a player in there that will probably be better. I'm prepared to be proved wrong. That's why I would say leave him as a bench option, bring in some other midfielders, and then see if he can do it in that team. If he can't, then he can be on his way as well. But for now, keep him.
Idris El Mazouni, I'd assume that would want him to stay.
Yeah, I've not seen enough of him in the first team to turn around and make a determination. I'd like to see him in the first team. Whether that happens or not, I don't know. That's why I said play some of these in the next 6 games, then we can make a better determination.
Armando Dobra.
Keep.
And finally, the forgotten man, the man himself, Emyr Hughes.
He can go. He's flat to deceive. He's probably a really nice guy, but he's just not cut the mustard.
Yeah, and I think his injuries have, played a toll on him. So, okay, so just to sum that up, Grenade, okay, I'll probably forget how many players we want to stay and go. So I'll probably leave that to the very end. So let's go to the forward, sorry. Caden Jackson, would you keep him, allow him to go to Huddersfield, or would you let him go?
I'd let him. Well, I think he's out of contract, isn't he? Is he out of contract?
He is, yes. Although, no, that's funny, actually. Why did we keep him when he's out of contract at the end of the season?
That's what makes me think whether Paul Lambert was going to offer him a contract, which bemuses me when he's refused a transfer. We got he wanted to leave to Huddersfield. We rejected that. I think we should have accepted it and got some money back for him. Quite frankly, I think that turned his head. He doesn't want to be here, and we're seeing that now. And quite frankly, he might as well go because he's not used to on that. So,
was he good enough to deserve a new contract anyway? Because, of course, they'd probably ask for quite a lot of money because, he was a good player last season and good clubs wanted to go for him or were going for him. So, yeah, was he worth thinking about giving a contract?
But it depends on what Huddersfield wanted to buy him for. Were they buying him for first choice, buying him for cover? I don't think they were buying him for first choice. They were probably buying him just in case, feel like third or fourth or fifth down the pecking order. You know what I mean? So, if that's the case, do we need him to be one of our first choice? Not really.
So, Jay, okay, here's a controversial one. We could both play devil's advocate here and get involved in the comments. James Norwood, would you keep him or let him go?
I would keep him, but he wouldn't be my first choice. He wouldn't be to be honest, at this moment in time, I'd keep him, but he'd be probably third choice. I'd get 2 more strikers ahead of him.
Would he want to stay there? Because judging by what he's done on Twitter and the, I don't know what you call it, but the signals that he's giving off, I guess, some might say that he hasn't got his heart at the club. So would he maybe want to go? Well,
you explain the position to him that, we'll be bringing in 2 strikers. Your position would be to fight for your position in that against those 2 strikers. He'd probably have an idea of who they are. If he feels that he's not going to be able to compete with those 2 strikers, then door's there. I'm keeping you. We're not going to tie you down and chain you up. You either perform or leave. That's Paul Lambert. That's what Paul Cook said.
And he's replaceable as well, isn't he? Of
course.
So Reece Curtis says Norwood keep for the bench. Freddie Sears. Now Freddie Sears has come off the bench quite a lot. He's done well on the ball, but he's flattered to deceive as well. Now, personally, I'd let go of him. I reckon he's a bit old now, and I reckon a League Two team would be better suited for him and would probably value him more than we would. So would you let go of Sears, or would you maybe give him a go?
I'd let go. I think it's the time now that he went to a club, probably would be his last club. He went to a club where probably maybe would be League Two, like he was at Colchester.
Yeah.
I don't think he'd go there, but another League Two club, quite a decent one, and where he'd be respected and he'd be like the fans would think, "Well, we've got Freddie Sears," you know what I mean? And that's what he needs coming towards the end of his career. He doesn't need to be like trying to get into a side where you've got probably moving forward some good players at a lot younger age than you. I think that's a hell of a lot to put on someone that age. I think it's time for him to go.
So Aaron Drinan. Now, I said I think it was before we came on air, that Aaron Drinan was one of the worst players I've seen up front for Ipswich, but that may be a bit harsh. Would you keep him as a bench option, as a third choice, or would you let him go?
He could clean the shoes if he likes, but I wouldn't keep him as a player.
Spot on. And finally, Oliver Hawkins. I forgot he even played for us, but there you go. Would you keep him or would you let him go?
Well, he's under contract, and so unless we can arrange a deal to get rid of him, I would get rid of him. I would find some way to cancel his contract or just try and let him go on a free transfer to someone. But I would get rid of him.
And there you have it, the players who we think should stay and the players who we think should go. And I'm going to leave a couple of minutes for people to ask questions in the comments, as I have one more question to close the show with. If we haven't got any questions, then we'll finish it there. So there's been speculation on Twitter and on the TWTD forum that the new owners have over 700 million in their bank accounts and they're willing to invest it into the club. Could we look too much into that? Does that make sense? Or is the 700 million actually there?
Quite frankly, I don't know. I wouldn't have said so at this moment in time. That might be how much they have for all their holdings. You know what I mean? For all the businesses, we're obviously going to be taking the lion's share because the likes of Phoenix Rising and things like that, and the club we have in Denmark, I think they probably don't cost as much as we cost to run. I would have said we would have a percentage of that, but even if we only had 10% of that, that's what, £70 million. If you divide that over 3 years, that's like £25 million a year. I know. Our losses are only £6 million a year. So you work it that way and you think to yourself, well, if our losses are 6 million, take that off 25, that's 19 million. It still leaves 19 million, doesn't it? So if you just 10% of that over 3 years can do a hell of a lot of damage if it's invested in the right areas.
So as Reese says here, we aren't going to go and spend millions and millions in the summer. We need to be realistic. Mark Ashton, okay, I was listening to him on Benjamin Bloom's podcast the other day. And, he wasn't actually on there. It was a Bristol journalism talking about Mark Ashton. And he said that the best thing Mark Ashton did for Bristol was the amount he invested in facilities. They had a new stadium built, they had new youth facilities built, and a new training complex built. So in a way, is Mark Ashton the best signing we could make?
This is the point I have with all these Bristol fans. I was having a laugh and a joke with a few of them on Twitter, and they're all cheering and dancing and saying, we're going back to the Mark Ashton leaving party. I'm saying, we won't be, my guys. I think, and I'm guilty of this, and I think a lot of fans are guilty of this. And sometimes when someone goes, you actually don't realise exactly what their role is involved and how much you relied on them. I think we fell into that with McCarthy a little bit.
Yes.
We all wanted him gone, but we got a hell of a lot worse when he went. Yeah. And I think Bristol City might be thinking well, he's damaged us with transfers, but they're not looking at the global aspects of what he brings. The fact that, he's brilliant with corporate and finding other revenue streams. He's a fantastic negotiator. you know, he virtually redesigned the stadium, and I think if that 700 million's right, I think a lot of that, because especially with the Matt Detmer, he's more a buildings guy. He builds things. I think some of that will be apportioned for probably building at Playford Road, probably maybe even building on the ground. I'm about making bigger restaurants and better facilities. And I think that part, if that 700 million pounds true, some of that would be for that, to make the brand of the club more expensive, the value of the club more expensive. And I think he'll be part of that. He was also chairman of the women's team at Bristol City, which I think he probably might do here, and that will be very good for the ladies' team. Having someone of that gravitas, being in charge of the ladies' team. So I think there's a lot more to Mark Ashton than what people make out, and I consider this a coup, because at the end of the day, he was CEO of the year in 2019, and Bristol City fans loved him.
Yeah.
Now they hate him. He's gone from like, the angel to the demon in like 18 months, and I'm thinking like, nah, there's something funny there. But I think there's more to him than meets the eye. He might be a bit of a Marmite figure, but if he brings in more positives than negatives, then that suits me.
And that is a perfect way to end the show. I want to thank all of those who've gotten involved in the comments, and you too, Stephen. I've really enjoyed having you on the show. And just finally, before we do wrap up, I want to talk about our sponsor. Julian Hughes is, of course, a golf coach. He teaches at Old Joves Golf. He offers fantastic lessons. And if you mention We Follow the Town, you can get a 20% discount. So what are you waiting for? You can contact him at 07392 834 199, 07392 834 199. And finally, before we end the show, we play Charlton next weekend. What do you reckon the score will be? And do you reckon we could win, Stephen?
Can we win? Well, anything's possible,
We beat Hull, didn't we?
I think they'd not have to turn up for us to do anything. I think what I'd love to see is a lot of youngsters out there and trying to give them a bit of the surprise element. I know it's not going to happen, but I can hope. I can be disappointed then on Saturday when it's not. But I think I'm not sure whether I'll pay for it yet. I might wait till the end of the season.
Yeah.
But what I'm going to start doing is I'll wait and see what the team looks like before I buy it. Because if it's anything like the other day and the team that played the other day, I don't want to invest my money watching that. I'm sorry. Yeah. It doesn't make me no less of a fan. It just makes me, if I pay a tenner to watch that, it makes me an idiot.
Yeah, it's dull football, and we're not going to score anyway, are we?
I'm paying up for my Sky TV. I'm not paying that just to watch that. It's deplorable. I'll wait till the end of the season, and then I'll get on the ITFC train, and I'll be buzzing with everyone.
Exactly, and personally, from my point of view, I think you're spot on, because I'm not going to pay £10 just to watch your team. You aren't going to play for the shirt. You aren't going to, be threatening up front like we were yesterday, because we weren't threatening up front at all. And those who do pay for it, I can only commend them, because, they're brave for paying for it, I guess. They're either stupid or brave.
This is just my opinion. It's not me dissing anybody who does want to pay for it. I'm just saying this is my opinion. If he played some young players with some more mature players around him, and we had a bit more of a youthful presence, that would convince me to pay. There'd be something for me there'd be something for me to buy into, But if it's your Wards and your Chambers, and your Judges and your Norwoods and your Drinnans, there's nothing for me to buy in. I can't buy into that. I won't. I refuse. I've paid, God, what, 40 matches I've paid for this season, probably more. And that's like
£400.
That's like nearly £500 I've paid for this season. I'm not doing it just to be disappointed every single, twice a week.
Yeah.
They don't realise, for some people, £20 a week is a lot of money. You might not be a top footballer, but some people, £20 a week's a lot of money. Fortunately, I've just give up smoking so I can afford it. But, you know, I don't know. I'll wait until Saturday. I'll decide then.
Exactly. So finally, where can people find you on Twitter? And of course, you're on Talking Town every week. Where can people listen to Talking Town?
Well, it's just got look at the Talking Town website. It's usually on Twitter and Talking Town on YouTube. I'm on Twitter as I am there, NW1 Steve, and I usually push my way somehow onto Talking Town and have a rant, you know, like most of us do. So, apologise to everybody on Talking Town last night. I got a bit angry last night. But never mind.
It was fair enough. I think everybody was angry. But anyway, thank you to those who've tuned in today. I've enjoyed this show. And again, thank you very much to Stephen for tuning in. We'll be back on Sunday. We, of course, have some cool news to announce soon. A bit of a tongue twister. And, of course, we're also on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter. Just type in We Follow the Town. So thank you for staying in. Rob Bug, real quick. Imagine buying a ticket at 25. I assume he means £25. But yes, I'll see you all on Sunday. And as always, keep following the town.